Most of our problems, I think, come back to one of sort of 5 or 6 core wounds that we pick up from our time as children that then get built upon, as our time at school and as young adults. These namely are kind of not good enough, not worthy, not understood, not seen, not heard. Those are really the foundational wounds around which all of our other shit gets built. And it can come from something as simple as not getting picked for the football team, for the soccer team, right?
I just got out of the national parks. I was in what was it called? The North Cascades. Apparently, it resembles the Swiss Alps, so I was super excited to be there. But what's cool is well, one, you're from England. That's dope. I haven't interviewed anyone from another country yet. Actually, no, that's a lie. I did someone from Italy, but I don't think they were born there. But it's interesting, like working around the time zone difference. Like you're literally like hours and hours ahead of me right now, right?
yeah. It's like 7:05. So I'll be honest, I'm almost getting ready for bed after this. So.
What the hell? I just woke up a few hours ago. That's so funny.
Yeah.
Man. Hey, we'll get right into it. I'm just gonna do my little intro thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome back to your Joyage. I'm Cage, your guy. I'll be replacing the little voice side dread for now, giving you a break from the constant internal monologue that is the human mind. I want to say first, thank you for listening, reviewing, whatever platform you're on. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, drop a like in this video so other people can find the voyage. Remember, you're following at Joyage Podcast on Instagram and TikTok to follow with all the updates, or at k.bergman on Instagram. Today we got a super cool guest. I'm really excited to talk to him. We've been, I think we got in contact through Easton, and yeah, man, we got a self-help guide. We got a dude who talks spirituality. He talks self-help, just spreading positivity in the world, and we fucking need some of that. So, welcome to the show, Tobias.
Thank you very much, man. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So, how old are you right now?
25.
25. Okay.
Yeah, I turned 25 in June, so still pretty.
How does it work in England right now? Like with university and all that. Like, did you go to university? Like, what was your last few years like?
Yeah, so I'll be honest. It's kind of. I mean, I don't really know that much about the American system. I'm sure you don't know much about the UK, right? So we'll find a little bit out. But there's. I think it follows the same narrative that, like, the idea is you go to school, you go to university, you get a job, you get married, follow all of that kind of stuff as like the life path they want to stick us on. I actually took a year out when I first graduated school. So I graduated school in like must have been like 2014. Took a year out because I wanted to go to drama school, didn't get in, and then kind of went traveling for a bit, and then went uni. So I was there for like 3 years. Came out. Must have been like 4 years ago now. I can't even remember. It feels like quite a long time. So it's been like 4 years, kind of was working in the same city, and now obviously working, setting up my own coaching business instead. So yeah, I think that's pretty much the same. Like you guys do 3 years at college, right?
It's something like some people go for 2, some people go for 3, 4. I went in for 4 years, and I mean, it was fine. I only went because like my parents said they were going to pay for it. They were like, look, this is your gift. So, hold on one second. Oh, I'm doing an interview right now. I'm sorry.
An interview?
It's for like a job thing. Yeah. I'll be out in 1 hour. I promise.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. It's the reality of
Yeah, man. That's
living in a
awesome.
car.
Honestly, I love it. That's so cool.
Yeah. So we do like the 4-year thing. My parents said they were going to pay for it, and I was like, okay, whatever. I didn't know what else to do. I was like 18. All I wanted to do was play soccer. That was my whole life for like forever. So I just did that. I played soccer for a year in university. Hated it. It was awful. And then I don't even know. Like I just did college and then graduated. Had no idea what I wanted to do. Spent like a year serving at a restaurant. Just making money. Didn't really know what I was supposed to be working toward. And I was just like, man, is this it? Like I just work a job and then do nothing. I don't. So what tell me how you got into like the like self-help spirituality realm. Was there something that happened to you early on? Was there things that you were growing up with? Like what are, like, if you were someone who's trying to get like their life ready, what would make them choose you over all these other people? Because this industry is saturated now.
It is, yeah. I'll come to that question second. Let me kind of tell about how I got here, because it's like I kind of grew up straight and narrow. I was always kind of like trying really hard at school. I was like what we call head boy. I don't know if that's like valedictorian. I think that's what they call in the US, something like that, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, it was always like trying really hard to kind of to be someone, you know, because I thought that's what I needed to do in order to kind of, what I now realize was get validation, basically. I didn't realize that was what I was trying to do at the time. And then, yeah, when at university, kind of started having a bit more fun, a lot more fun actually. Where I went to uni was quite a party place. And, but I was always very like, toe the party line, you know, kind of get a job, everything that I'm being told to do is the way to do it, kind of thing. And that kind of continued. So I worked in sales for coming up to, I mean, pretty much 3 years. What really brought it on for me was COVID. You know, I live alone. I've lived alone in my own apartment for a few years. And then obviously with the lockdowns coming, none of the stuff I used to have to kind of give my life a sense of meaning, you know, which I now realize was basically just escapism, a way to escape the mundanity of the 9 to 5. All of that stuff was taken away. You know, it was just me and my thoughts and my problems. And when you haven't got things to run from your problems with, you know, like partying and friends and all this stuff, like there's nothing to stop them hitting you in the face, you know. So that was kind of my reality for, we were in lockdown March till May 2020 was the first one. And I was just not taking care of myself. You know, I was obviously working from home, not really exercising, not seeing anyone. And so I just got really, really anxious. I got really depressed, really anxious. And just kind of found myself in this, like, where a lot of people have found themselves recently, I think, in this like cycle of negativity, you know, kind of like mulling over these problems, and then I'd get emotions about whatever was coming up, and then I'd judge it, and, you know, it just became a mess. And then I had a breakdown. I'll be honest, I had a full-on breakdown. Like, two of my best mates came up towards the end of the 3 months. I was a mess. I was so paranoid. I just moved into a new flat. Like, I was like, we can't make any noise. Like, almost honestly, like, it's like stereotypical, like, you know, scratching at the walls kind of thing almost. Yeah. It was crazy. And I realized, like, I broke down in front of my mates. I was crying for like 3-4 hours, you know, and a guy, any guy, I'm sure it's the same in the US as it is in the UK. The idea of crying like that in front of your mates was terrifying. But it felt like the most empowering thing that had ever happened to me. I'll be honest. I felt after that, I was like, wow, I feel free. I feel like I've let go of so much stuff. And that was the moment for me. You know, that was where I was like, all right, I need to do something here, because this isn't going away. I'm still going to be living it by myself. You know, and I can either kind of work myself up into a state and break down again, or I can do something about it. So yeah, I just kind of started looking into self-help. I mean, what really did it was I Googled like self-help books, and on there was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Mm-hmm. And just something in me just said, that's the one you need to read. And I got it on audiobook, and I'll be on it within an hour. I mean, I know it's a cliche, but it really changed my life overnight, because it just completely shifted my whole paradigm instantly. It was like, you know, here's a guy telling me that all this shit that I've been dealing with, that I've been kind of bringing up for myself, is self-created. You know, it's not actually me, that I'm not my mind, I'm not my thoughts. 20 years of formal education, no one's taught me any of this. No one's taught any of my friends any of it. No one's taught any of my family any of it. Everything that I'm dealing with, I see that everyone else is dealing with in a similar way. And this seems to be the answer, but nobody's telling me it, you know? So that was really it. That was where I was like, I guess I've always had it in me, this desire to do something with my life, you know, to it sounds a little bit cheesy, but it has been there to kind of make a difference. I used to think that was politics or something. But when I found spirituality, I knew this was it. You know, I knew this was what I had to do. I wanted to kind of help get that out there to more people, basically. So that kind of started me on, you know, it became my life, because we were kind of straight back into lockdown pretty soon after that. And I just became more and more invested. The more I found out, you know, reading other books like The Untethered Soul, things like this, just, you know, broadened my perspective even more. And then obviously started looking into like online business, and joined a business community called Six Figure Mentors, and met my coach through there. And he was like, bro, why don't you start doing coaching? And I was like, well, I don't know, you know, don't I have to have all these certifications and have loads of experience? And he was like, nope, that's all a load of crap. Like, that's all what society tells you is necessary, but you only need to be one step ahead of someone else in order to help them. So yeah, I took the plunge again. Kind of along the way, I just feel like there were little moments of like the universe, now what I now think, guiding me, or like intuition, sort of saying, you know, this is what you need to look at, this is what you need to do. And each time I followed that voice, it led me somewhere closer to where I wanted to be, closer to like finding happiness, really. So I followed that, and yeah, here I am, sort of, where are we now, like 9 months later. Managed to quit my job. I'm working. I've got a few clients now. I mean, when I first started with my coach, my biggest fear was what people thought of me. And the idea of even sharing an article on Facebook about something like the environment that I was passionate about, I couldn't do it. I was so terrified of what people would think that much. And bit by bit, we just kind of worked through this. I started like opening up about my mental health and sharing about my experiences, and seeing that everybody was kind of responding to this, like, yeah, shit, man, yeah, thank you, because I'm going through this similar. And yeah, I gradually just kind of got more confident, started doing TikTok, had some pretty quick growth on there, and yeah, here I am now. So
the great thing about the spirituality thing, what I liken it to is because I'm in a similar path, I would say, with you. I'm not doing like the career aspect in that way yet, or I don't know if I will ever, but The Power of Now I've read, a fucking phenomenal book, and I had an experience recently that kind of opened my eyes to some of the things he said that I would read and I couldn't fully. I could appreciate it, but I couldn't fully grasp what he was saying sometimes. I was like, oh, that's nice, but I can't like do that. I don't actually feel that from you. And I know he did. And so what I say for like people who are trying to get spiritual, or like even some people will take psychedelics for an experience like that's, transcendent or whatever. I always say, like, if you're not already knocking on the door, the locked door that's like spirituality, enlightenment or whatever, the psychedelic is like the key. But if you're not already at the door, the psychedelic's not going to somehow make you this spiritual person who's like on this journey. Like, you already have to be doing that just normal, like on your life. And so people who like find the spiritual community, especially through TikTok, like that's where I first started getting into it. I mean, I've always been kind of like this, but to finally find a community of people who actually thought some of these things, who were struggling with some of these things, and finally people who are posting some of their stories, like you just said, that like opened up an entire new sector, and all these people were like, oh my God, I'm not alone. And so what you're doing is fucking dope. Like, it needs to be talked about more, and the people who share the stories of like when they were struggling and some of the things that they're doing, and they don't come from a place of like ego and just like, I'm better because I'm, working on myself, then like that's the best stuff. And I saw a fucking video, a TikTok of you hugging trees, and like to some people they're gonna look at that and they're gonna be like, this dude, but then it doesn't matter, like you're just out here posting. Who gives a shit, right? Like, you're just posting it, and some people really take that and love it. Like, I mean, it's dope. But anyways, continue what you're talking about, because you went from that and then you started your career.
yeah, no, I just want, it's interesting, right? Because when I first read The Power of Now and I had my awakening, I had no idea that this was like a big thing. For me, it was like I'd found this book that was somehow, and I was like, oh my God, it's like, I've got to get this out into the world because this is the answer. No one's talking about it. And, when I finally then started to get into entrepreneurship and meet more people, and then got into social media, and I was like, okay, wow, it's actually, like, there's a big awakening happening, and this has been here for a long time. So that was quite interesting. But yeah, so I think the next part of the question you asked was why people should come to me, right? I think that was probably, I mean, the first thing I'd say is they shouldn't necessarily. I think the most important thing, what I'm realizing, is that what matters is finding an affinity and a connection with the person that you work with. Like, I haven't got any qualifications. I'm not a trained therapist or a doctor or anything, but I work with people who have been in therapy for a long time and have said that, an hour or a couple of sessions with me have been more impactful than that. And that's not because it's me. I think it's because of the connection that we have, and I think it's equally, there's people I've had calls with where it's like, we're not quite right for each other. So, I would never say like, yeah, you should all absolutely come to me. I think it's about following kind of your heart and seeing what kind of resonates with you as an individual. Because a lot of people don't feel that they've got in therapy or whatever, right, that person they fully have that kind of connection with, where they really feel safe to open up about a lot of these things. So, to answer the question why people should come with me, I think it's more about like, follow your heart and you'll be guided to the person that kind of is right for where you are in your journey, for your mission, for kind of where you are. Because, there's people I speak with and it's like, yeah, we're not quite right, or, I'm not quite the right person for you. In terms of what actually I do is like, my whole ethos is like, be your own savior, right? That's kind of what my the premise of what I help people do is, because for my journey, And I think that's where I'm best placed to help people, is people who are on a similar sort of path to where I am. Before I went through my own healing journey, and I'm still going through it as well, you know, I had this big sense in me that I needed something outside of myself to complete me, to complete my life. You know, a relationship, primarily a relationship, was probably the main thing I was clinging on to, but also like success, you know, material success, things like this. And really, the big part of my journey has been realizing that actually, you know, it's not outside of us; it's within me. And I think there's an element of that within everybody's journey, in a sense, right? But and yeah, kind of really unlearning what the core wounds, limiting beliefs that I think it all really comes back to. You know, most of our problems, I think, come back to one of sort of 5 or 6 core wounds that we pick up from our time as children, that then get built upon, you know, as our time at school and as young adults. You know, these namely are kind of not good enough, not worthy, not understood, not seen, not heard. Those are really the foundational wounds around which all of our other shit gets built. And it can come from something as simple as not getting picked for the football team, for the soccer team, right? Yeah, it can come from something as simple as being left to self-soothe as a child. This is a parenting technique which has been, for some reason, said that it was a really, really input, like it was the main parenting technique for so long. We now know it's really damaging for kids. And like, as a child's mind at this time, anything that is painful to us, right? We, as a defense mechanism, we rationalize that as a young child, and we give it a meaning so that we can try and control it. And usually, in fact, always, because it's the only thing we can do, we make it about us. This is between the age of 0 and 7 in particular. So we all, I think, pick up these wounds at some extent. And then, you know, maybe we go to school and somebody rejects you, or you get picked on, and that wound, you know, your belief system kind of goes, yeah, look, there we go, it's true. And it becomes even like a tighter part of your identity. And then it happens again, in reinforcement. And this is kind of how, you know, this belief goes from kind of like a wound to becoming a really like massive problem in your life. So yeah, what I guess what I do with people is help them kind of, starting from the surface level and going inwards, see how maybe you'll come to me with confidence issues, or you know, self-doubt or whatever, and see how that's impacting your life, and draw the awareness back to kind of what this underlying belief and wound is, and actually look at tackling that. Because I think so much stuff out there is very surface level. I'm again hearing that even within counseling and therapy, it's often quite like this. A lot of the self-help industry is very much like this, because they want you to keep coming back for more and more and more. And I don't agree with that. You know, I think that we want to get to the root of the issue and heal that, and understand our wounds. And when we know this, it's not always easy, right? I'm still healing from mine. I'm still learning, and I come back around to stuff I thought I let go of all the time. But, you know, I know what my issue is, so it's a lot easier to kind of, you know, make that decision, rather than just kind of not feeling confident and trying to add surface level fixes to feel confident, without addressing the underlying root, which is you don't feel confident because you fundamentally don't feel loved, or you don't feel good enough, or you don't feel worthy, right? So yeah, that's really where you know, place most of the focus. But you know, again, it's kind of about seeing what comes up each week, each day with clients, because life moves pretty quickly, and yeah, as I'm sure you know, right? So we've got to see what comes up. I think the main thing is just, and this is what a coach offers, it's just being a stand. It's being a stand for you, just being there, you know, and in a way where probably we've never really had that before. I've never had a relationship like I've got with my coach with anybody, where I feel like I can just be fully me and vulnerable, and he's going to hold that space completely non-judgmentally, and just help me understand myself and my problems better. I think that's the real gift of coaching.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think a lot of people, I mean, do you get most of your clients through TikTok, or where do people find you?
Yeah, it's primarily through TikTok. That's where most of my audience is. I get the odd person through Instagram, and I think that's kind of it so far. You know, maybe we'll get some through sort of word of mouth or something in the future is the plan. But yeah, mostly TikTok.
Are they people like your age, or older, younger?
Honestly, I've had a big old spread. The first person I ever spoke to was you know, late 50s, 60s, and I get people sort of my age. Some as young as 16, 17 that have been incoming. So it's really, the similarity is I think in that they all tend to be quite empathic, sensitive people like myself, and have a similar wound. That's the similarity more than age or gender, race, anything like that.
So did all the things that you've learned, some through spirituality, some things through like, I mean, it sounds like you've done some research on like inner child work and like past traumas and all that stuff. Is this stuff you done research on? Was it something that you just like the Power of Now book like unlocked intelligence in you, or like where did all this information come from? Like where'd you find out all this stuff?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I've been just growing a lot and learning as much as I can, and investing a lot in myself in sort of training and courses. And I learned pretty quickly the power of fighting that voice. And if you're seeing something that you think can benefit you and it's going to cost a few £100 to do it, you make that jump and you do it, right? And I bought courses from Joe Vitale on belief clearing, which was really powerful. I did Tony Robbins sort of, I didn't do his UPW, but I did like his 5-day sort of lots of the, like lots of these like free 5-day events that some of these guys do. I just signed up for as many of those as I could and just learned from those things. And it just sort of kind of started to piece together and I started to understand it. But I honestly think, I do think a lot of this, and the people who aren't spiritual will say this is bullshit, but for me, I think a lot of it just comes from a download. It comes from outside of me. It comes from the super conscious, the collective unconscious, whatever you want to call it. Intuition. It seems to kind of happen that way, I think, and obviously built on some of the things that I've taught myself and understood through various books. The Power of Now was definitely the spark, but I do think there's been things that have been more impactful than that for me.
Where are you in this journey for yourself? Like not even as far as like the business side, entrepreneur side, like on this journey of spirituality and like figuring out yourself. Every time I've made like a big self-discovery about something where I'm like, oh my God, this is it. This is like going to change everything. And it does, but it's typically always a stepping stone to another thing later down the road. Where do you think you're at on this thing of spiritual? Does it have an end? Does it just keep going, or?
I think there's no limits. I think it's a process of letting go more than anything else. I always say this. It's a process of letting go of what's not us more than adding new parts and unwire and unlearning things that we don't need more than learning new stuff. I think that's the key. As the Buddhists put it, it's about letting go of attachments, and the more that we let go, the higher we rise, and the more we kind of connect with the pure divine essence that we are, really. So I think that's it. And I think it's a never-ending journey. The beauty is in the journey more than trying to get to any destination. But yeah, where I am. So, I mean, I really came to understand myself and my wounds in a lot more detail, particularly working with my coach. A lot of it, I said, kind of comes back to relationships, being really open and real. Like a lot of it came from kind of, should we say, like relationships not working out or getting rejected by certain people at school, and then this building in a story where this became a part of my identity, where it's like I always get rejected by the people that I like, and that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and that's happened a few times. And it's like, because that fear is there, when I meet someone that I like, when I get into a potential relationship, that part of me just kind of like latches on, and runs at it and chases at it. And whenever you chase something, that thing's running away from you. So I had an experience at the back end of last year with somebody where that happened, and it really just brought all this stuff up. Like it was painful, and I realized, I was like, this isn't about this girl, it's about me, and it's about all my past stuff. I had another experience recently where it's like, I thought I'd kind of learned all this stuff, and it happened again. And I was like, shit, we keep coming back round. And it's just, I'm in a place where I'm really just learning to embrace it and just not fight it, not try and control so much, not try and wish that I was somewhere and that I was at this mythical endpoint where I've got this relationship and everything there, and just trusting that that's there for me, that's going to come, that it's already there, like the eternal now, the eternal present moment is what a lot of people talk about. I buy into this idea that there is no past or future. Everything's happening now, and it's about getting into the alignment of the energy of the thing that we want. So I guess where I am now, and I'll be honest, the last couple of weeks brought me back to this pain, this sort of this trauma, this wound within me, but in a way where it was like, it didn't take me over anymore. It was kind of like I was seeing this and observing it and seeing how I'd slipped back into unconsciousness and kind of was coming from this wound instead of, being consciously aware of it. And I think that's the key, really. It's about, being aware of these things so that when we can see that we're slipping back into that pattern, we can make the new choice, and then we keep making that choice and we wire in the new paradigm instead. So yeah, that's where I am. I'm really at a place where I just want to keep letting go. I feel it. I think there was it might be another Buddhist or some personal growth. Someone said that the first part of your life is about creating a beautiful ego, a nice ego, a caring ego, a good ego. And then the second part of your life is about letting that go. I feel like I'm at the part where I've built a pretty good ego, and I want to let this go. I really want to let it go and transcend. I'm kind of at an in-between stage, shall we say, from, I feel like I've brought myself this far. I'm kind of now seeking out teachers and more practices and things that can help me get to that next stage of letting.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's crazy to me how like one little thing that happens can throw you down a spiral after you've spent so many months building yourself, and it can shoot you down in a heartbeat. But the good thing is how you just said, which I think it may even go over a lot of people's heads because you don't notice it when it's happening, of like when you realize, when you start picking up earlier that like, hey, wait a second, that just happened to me last year and it just happened again, and you notice it this time before 5 months of your life goes by and you realize you wasted it. You realize it 2 months in, and then over time you build and build, and you build the callus, or not the callus, but like you build yourself up to a point where at some point you'll be able to notice it like instantaneously. You'll feel it, and you'll feel like an energy field inside you. And that's the one thing that probably the one thing in the book that I still haven't fully grasped is the energy field inside. I've got to a point, I had an experience that was very much like Eckhart's, very like at the beginning of the book where he said. And so now, after post that experience, I've reread the book now. I'm still rereading it, and a lot of the things that he's saying are like, I'm like, oh, now I get it. Like that makes so much more sense now. And the one thing I still don't get is the energy field part. I don't feel any like energy thing. So I know that's just something I got to build up to, and one day I will be able to. But I'm curious, have you had an experience like Eckhart's? Because I don't know how common that is.
No. So the experience where he was in pain and he went into himself and came out and was completely blissful and all of that. Is that what you? No. Well, I had a moment where I kind of touched it. Being totally honest, I was on psychedelics at the time. Yeah. So, it's pretty easy. As a lot of us are. Yeah, exactly. So that's not quite the same thing. No, but I have felt the energy. I do work with energy quite a lot, and I work with that with my clients. And I think it's more that you breathe into this, the more you do start to feel it. A lot of it, what started it for me was, and I can't remember which book or where I read this, was kind of feeling like the inside of your fingers. You kind of feel that tingling, and then you start to kind of breathe into this. And I'm very aware that I have energy blocks down my left side, which interesting is the feminine side. My wounds equate to what a wounded feminine would be, quite sort of, chasing love, that kind of thing. Wounded masculine is a bit different, and that equates to the right side of your body. I'm very aware, and it have been for a while now, of this quite intense energy blockage in my stomach, in my throat. Interestingly, I always had digestive issues growing up. I had IBS, stuff like that, which we now know from the Eastern model of medicine is known for ages. When we get blocked chakras, eventually it manifests in physical illness, right? And I think it's really interesting that that's there. So no worries.
Anyways, continue. I'm sorry about that.
I love it. No, it's all good, man. It's all good. Obviously I'm aware of these energy blocks within me. I'm really been trying to clear them. And I think that this stomach wound, I think that relates to the initial trauma, whatever it was that caused my wound. I'm now looking for ways to help clear this. I'm going to be getting Reiki and stuff like this as well. And I do kind of work with, a lot of it is, this is why people often struggle with it, because it is using your imagination a lot, and sort of imagining colors and things like that. But again, the more we do it, the more I get a sense of it. And I'm no way a sort of energy guru or maestro or anything like that, but it's definitely something I want to work more with. But I have had a couple of experiences. I had one quite early on where I was meditating and started to feel this energy kind of, I almost felt like like I felt like my chakras aligned, and then I felt this sort of pulsing and it vibrating higher and higher, and I sort of felt myself rising up, and I was just like vibrating like this. And
Wow.
that was pretty crazy. That was quite early on in my journey, and then I was like, okay, I believe this energy thing now, and this is clearly real. I had a couple other experiences like that. I think the most profound thing that I've ever had was just a feeling of, you know, when people talk about like the divine love that's all around us, and you feel that taking over you. I had that. I you know, I was not sober at the time. I think I was actually pretty drunk. So I don't know how you can get that on alcohol, but I did. I was kind of like, yeah, just meditating, and just was just like giving gratitude for my situation, and just felt this wave of love come over me. And I was just like crying, but in a way that it was really beautiful. And I'd heard about stuff like this before, and yeah, kind of experienced it in that moment. And that's when you realize this phrase, love is all around, you know, is actually like literal. It's the literal energy out of which all things come, you know, including you and me.
Yeah, no, 100%. The experience that I was talking about earlier, that was much like Eckhart's, that also came through psychedelics. And the weird thing is, I know people have a stigma with shifts in consciousness and experiencing things, like they say it's not real or whatever. But I mean, for me, I've talked about this on other podcasts, like whether you experience certain things on psychedelics, through meditation, through like energy healing, through like whatever, like hypnosis, or if you're sober, I don't think they're any better or worse than the other shifts in consciousness. I just think they're different. And like some people, like Eckhart, who knows if like he was on drugs? Like, I mean, he probably wouldn't. So, like, especially now, since he's like blowing up and he's this guy. Like, what if he was on acid? If he was to say that, he would lose everything, all his credibility, you know. And so for me, like when I started, I mean, I have no idea where I'll be in the future, but I want to be very open. I'm like, yeah, it had to do with a little bit with acid, but it had a whole lead up. Like I was reading these couple books, I was like meditating, I was doing really, really good like grounding work. And then I took acid just on a whim, just because I was already out in this like beautiful nature area. And I was like, well, I had no thoughts toward like having an enlightened moment. I just was like, let me take this acid just to see what happens. Usually that's something cool happens. Maybe I'll learn something. And I was like, I guess I'll just take a walk. Went on a little walk, and somehow ended up on top of a mountain, and along like a ridge of a mountain. And so, right, so I timed it really well too. I have a decent amount of history and experimentation with these things. So I was on top of a mountain on a ridge, and there's a sunset on one side, and then there's almost a full moon on the other. And so one side of the ridge is blue, it's got the moon, all the peaks of the mountains are in the distance, and then one side is like orange red with the sun setting and all the mountains. And I have a video. I did some filming with this because I was like so overwhelmed, and somehow like I had cued the music perfectly. I had like the most intense music playing at the same time, and I was literally so overwhelmed, and I was trying to film all of it because I was like, I'm never gonna be able to like I have to remember this. I have to document it. And every like 2 or 3 minutes, I would reset and be like, oh my God, I'm not gonna be able to remember this. And I would redo the whole thing. And after 3 or 4 times, I was like, oh my God, wait, every 2 minutes, I think I'm never gonna be able to like remember this feeling. And then it happens again. And then I think it's gonna like happen all over again. So I was like, wait, this is like me trying to stop a moment that's gonna happen. And then I was sitting there and I was like, wait, this is just a sunset. Like, this is a pretty sunset, but this is just a sunset. This happens every single 12 hours, to sunrise and sunset. This is nothing inherently special. It just felt so crazy and like fast. And I was like, wow, I'm trying to savor this moment because I know it's going to end. The sunset will happen in 10 minutes. It's going to be dark in 10 minutes. So like, I've been trying to stop it. And I was like, wait, this is like the most dragged out present moment ever. And I'm like realizing it in like real time. And I remember I was sitting there and I was like, oh my God, this is like the actual present moment if I can just stop trying to prolong it and document it. And I'm sitting there fucking sobbing. I haven't cried in like 3 years. And I went on this trip to like travel the world and all this to like fix some of my problems, to hopefully cry one day, and I did on top of the mountain. And I'm sobbing, and I have all these fucking videos of it, and I'm working on like a documentary style video right now. But I'm like sobbing, and I'm like, oh my God, this is unfucking believable. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I can't believe how beautiful this is. So I'm looking around, I'm like, I am so grateful. This is like what I've been missing. I haven't been grateful of this whole world and this universe, and questions like, why am I here? What is my purpose? It's so meaningless. Like, who could ever explain this? There's so much crazy shit. Like, it doesn't matter. I was like, you just got to be happy we're here. And it's just the most crazy revelation. I sat there and just like, after this whole thing, I sat there like passed out on the ground. I was just looking at the sky and I'm just like, oh my God, bro. And it was unfucking believable. And then I was like, I found it. I did it. I accomplished my mission. I found everything, and the answer was nothing. Like, there's nothing. But it's everything at the same time. And I remember I walked back to my car, and I'm sitting there, and I've wanted to start writing a book, and I just started like jotting down some stuff, and I was like, wow, I found the answer, and the answer is nothing. But nothing is a thing. It's not nothing. Like, there's a thing, and it's nothing. And I was like, wow, that's it. And I was like, I just have to accept that and make it for what it is. And I always knew that. A lot of people know that. They're like, hey, nothing actually has inherent meaning, and people buy into that. But to have an experience where you're forced into a realization and you like actually have like a movie moment, because that shit was crazy. That I was literally sitting there and I was like, did someone write this? Am I a character in a movie? Because this is ridiculous. I mean, on top of a mountain, sunset. And I just remember feeling like, this is it. This has to be it. There's like nothing really matters anymore. I found the answer. I can just be chill. It's like I read the book, the full book, and now I'm thrown back into chapter 2. But now I have a calm sense of like, not urgency, because I'm like, oh, like everything's fine. Everything that's ever happened to me had its place, and it was necessary, whether or not it sucked or was great. And dude, that experience changed my entire fucking life in a way that I never saw coming. And you know, people are going to say it's because of the acid, maybe this and that. But I'm like, bro, it doesn't matter. It happened. It happened for me, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, man. I loved it. I love that. And I think it's so important that we do share about this. And that you're right, you know, there is a huge stigma, and particularly in the UK, you know, this is why I'm quite glad that I don't have a job anymore, because I feel like I can be more open about these things. You know, and the truth is we live within this social conditioning. A lot of what I focus on again is social conditioning, that we're so like chiseled into this one model of reality where we think, because we exist within this one state of consciousness, that's all there is, you know. Mm-hmm. And then obviously we won't get down the rabbit hole of why they've demonized things like LSD and all of that, but you know, you can look into it. It's pretty obvious why they've done it. You know, to make us think that these things is all just in our head, it's just making it up. I mean, I don't buy that, and I think anyone who's taken these things doesn't buy it. That it much more seems like we're being unlocked and made aware of things that are all around us. You know, when you realize that we can only see something like, I don't know the percentage, isn't it something like 7% or something like literally 0.7% of the electromagnetic spectrum we can be aware of? It's like nothing. So, you know, and like you say, it doesn't matter how you have that experience. Does it really matter at the end of the day? It's like, that's like saying, well, okay, you cured your cancer, but you use medication.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you use chemo, it doesn't count. You use your mind, you know, it's bullshit. It's a load of bullshit. But the truth is there's so much fear around it. And there is a lot of fear. And I noticed this with, you know, I speak with my parents or older generation who kind of have grown up, particularly around the 70s, where a lot of this backlash came from. And it was advert after advert of, you know, there's your brain. I don't know if you've seen that advert in the 70s of like a frying pan. It's like, there's your brain on an egg, and then they fry it and that's your brain on acid. It's just like, you know, so it is important we talk about these things. And I think, you know, if somebody's sitting here listening to you describe something so beautiful, but all they can think about is, well, that's a load of shit because it was on acid, it's just a real shame. And I think that says much more about their own, you know, conditioning and fears more than anything else.
Well, and they miss the point. You know, it's like, oh, you can get on these nitty gritty details, especially with things like religion and like Christianity versus, you know, Buddhism versus this. I'm like, dude, if you're arguing this point over that point, you missed everything. That is not the point of these religions. The religions are to like bring you into like a center of like one and love and all this stuff. I was like, that's the only thing that matters. Everything else is just fucking metaphorical. It's all symbolic. Like, it doesn't matter if you believe that God is an actual, you know, like being, or if God is like you, or if God is this. I'm like, it's the same representative thing. It's the one love or whatever the word is. And it just doesn't matter. People get tied up in the wrong shit. I'm like, no, that's not what, it doesn't matter, you know. And that's the problem with religions, is it doubles as like a social thing. And so when that happens, you know, people get, you know, uptight about this one versus that one. And so it stinks, because it's great, because being a part of anything social is good. We're human, we're social creatures, but it's also going to bring positives and negatives. And it's too bad that we see people fighting over something that's already so beautiful and just given to us. And I feel like everyone has a little bit of an inkling of like spirituality in us, and the awareness. I mean, I remember talking to Easton, who you know, and he was like, yeah, I think awareness is the biggest thing. And when we were talking about that, I understood what he was saying, but I was also like, yeah, but is awareness enough? Is being aware enough to push a new movement, or does there need to be more? What do you think? Is awareness the stepping stone, or is awareness the key?
So what I often say to my clients is let's take it on the smaller scale with your own individual growth. I think 90% of it is awareness and 10% of it is knowing what to do with that awareness, and I think awareness is the key because, what was coming up for me, a lot of these issues are like tribalism, for instance, this division that we have, people identifying with one religion over another, race, even like LGBT, all of these things. Yeah, there's a lot of really beautiful, positive intentions behind them, but they're kind of missing the point because we're getting identified with a specific viewpoint, a specific tribal sector of humanity, instead of realizing that we are all one. We're actually all part of the cosmos. We're all made of the same stuff that everything else is. That's the point. With awareness of how things like our mind works, that we have very naturally ingrained tribal tendencies in our mind because it was a survival mechanism where when we were evolving, we needed to be distrusting of other groups, of other tribes. And so this natural tendency to kind of demonize the other, the other group is very inherent within our mind. These things that are they're very deep subconscious drives within us. The next stage of evolution is about having the awareness of these things and using our own consciousness, our own intention to kind of consciously evolve, to evolve past this like very outdated. We've still got the same mind that we did when we were like 100,000 years ago. It's not evolved really in that space of time. And look how far we've come in the last 3, 4, 5 years, 10 years, let alone the last 100,000 years. So yeah, I think awareness really is the root of all of it, because as we become aware, awareness ultimately is who we are, right? Because when you get back to that root of who am I, the root of spirituality, and you go deeper and you let go of, I'm not, you ask someone who they are, they might say, well, I'm Tobias and I'm a 6'5" guy and I work this. No, that's not who you are. Who you are underneath is purely consciousness, is awareness. That's all there fundamentally is. Out of awareness is what everything else is created from. So the more that we connect with this, we're also connecting with who we really are, and we become aware of who we're not and all this other shit that's kind of going on, and it's kind of easier to make that choice. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, because I don't think it's as simple as I don't think you can ever sort of say this is the way to change the world and it's going to fix all our problems. But as you increase the awareness of people who are deeply unconscious and are living, within this unconscious like ego paradigm that so many, probably most of the population, are still kind of consumed by, people realize that the things that they were divided over, like you said, doesn't really matter anymore, because that's not, that is your mind, that's your ego trying to grab onto something for the illusion of security. Yeah. Well, we don't need any security because we're nothing, we're everything. Yeah. And so it's all within you, and that comes from awareness.
100%. And the awareness, I think for me, I don't know if this is true for everybody, but for me, my goal now that I have the awareness and that I've been working on growing it, it's basically just to become more and more aware to a point where I'm just always I always have like an underlying level of like calmness, but I want that to be a little bit like, that's probably like 10%, and then 90% I'm just like reacting to stuff. Like I want my awareness to grow so that I notice things instantly rather than like way later when I'm reflecting on it. And I think that's like a goal that everyone can kind of strive for, especially like a lot of people when they get into spirituality, they'll be good for a few months, maybe a few years, and they'll hit a wall where they're like, all right, what am I doing here? Like what's the next step? And I think it's really just build on that, build and build and build. And that's what Eckhart Tolle talks about really well. He's like, you just want to get to a point where you're just like constantly very aware, but also like when you're aware, it doesn't mean you're like, people say, well, if I'm aware, then I can't think. How am I supposed to live life and talk to people and do this? He's like, no. You can still do all that. He goes, you can always do all that. He goes, but like your consciousness, like your awareness, that doesn't need the mind. Like it can do that without it. And he talks about that a lot. Like the mind is a tool. He's like, it's great for certain things. He goes, but when you're not doing those certain things, put that shit down and just chill. Like, and that's really hard for people to grasp. It's really hard for me still to grasp sometimes, because it's a difficult concept to kind of apply to your life. You're like, well, how am I supposed to think about that when it's happening in real time, And it's difficult to build on, but it's one of those things you just kind of like try not to beat yourself up about it, because it's really easy to, because you'll have a good month where like everything's doing well, you're feeling really good, and then one month where you're like, fuck. You know. So yeah, man. What other books have you read?
The biggest one that I always recommend, this is, I think, where people are listening to this and thinking, oh, I need to read The Power of Now, I would actually start with The Untethered Soul. I don't know if you've read that, Michael Singer. It's amazing, a really beautiful book. And he condenses it into an easier way to read. And he touches on things like energy and it's just so, Eckhart's is quite, it's pretty profound. It's pretty, I don't know if it's esoteric, but it's quite like,
a lot.
As you've experienced, yeah, it's quite a lot, right? And I think it takes, it's one of those that you can probably read and listen to 10 times and still get more out of. I think if you want an introduction to this, The Untethered Soul is perfect, because the way he writes it, it's so relatable to what we as, let's say, unconscious or even just normal human beings go through day in, day out. I get all of my clients and all of my audience to read that, and everybody says it's life-changing. So that's probably a big one. Also, The Surrender Experiment, which he wrote, which is his story from in the 60s and 70s, getting into like spirituality and things, and basically just realizing that, hey, look, the more I try and control my life, the more it seems to go wrong. But there's a force here at work that seems to always work out for the best. So what happens if I naturally surrender to that instead of trying to control things? And so he did this like throughout his life and built crazy things like a huge spiritual community, multi-billion pound businesses, and he owes it all to this surrender experiment. It's been the biggest book in, the entrepreneur world, and certainly like amongst like millionaires and things for quite a while. I credit everything I've created to surrendering. Whenever I felt something, an opportunity in front of me that I felt fear, I've surrendered to it, and it's helped get me where I am. So I really recommend that. Letting Go, David Hawkins. Have you come across that?
I've heard of the first two, but I haven't read any of these books. I've only read a few books actually. But I have actually not heard of the third one you just mentioned.
Letting Go, yeah. So I think it's Power versus Force is I think maybe he's got Sending the Levels of Consciousness. I mean, Letting Go is the only one that I say read. I actually listen to all of mine because it's easier to kind of just put them on the go.
Yeah.
And you can speed it up to like 1.75 times, which I tend to do as well. Yeah, it's great. So that's really powerful. I'm actually going through that for the second time. There's probably quite a few. I don't want to list loads, but I think the next two that stand out would be Inner Engineering by Sadhguru, and the latest one from Joe Dispenza, which I can't remember what it's called, Becoming Supernatural. Okay. That's really, really powerful because he's done a lot of the work on the sort of the science behind it. Again, he's someone who gets a lot of, people trying to tear him down, but there's a lot of studies, which I think is when I try and speak to somebody about a lot of spiritual stuff, there's a lot of doubt and skepticism. When you bring in quantum physics and all of the fact that there's so much science that is now backing up very long held spiritual beliefs, something as simple as the fact that we've shown the universe is all energy vibrating at different frequencies, and we've shown that we emit our own electromagnetic frequency from our heart, and that there's more neurons going from our heart to our brain than our brain to our heart, these kind of things. When you start to say these things and say it in a scientific way, how they're now showing it, it helps people to understand, I think. And yeah, Joe Dispenza's work is really good for that.
Hell yeah. I mean, I haven't read a ton of spirituality books. I've read How to Think Like a Monk, I think it's one book. I think it's called, by Jay Shetty. That's an extraordinary book because of the way he wrote it. It's like tailored for people who want to believe, they want to understand, but they can't quite make that jump because it doesn't quite make sense in their head. And he does a really good job bridging that gap between like full on I'm a monk to like, how am I supposed to apply this to me working a 9-to-5 job in New Jersey kind of thing. And so I've read that book, and then the two books that I read, or the one book I read that was leading up to my spiritual I call it a spiritual death, that moment on the mountaintop, because I fully shed that skin on the mountain. It's gone. My carcass is up there, I'm sure. But I read a book called The Final Summit, and it was basically an exact metaphorical like story of what I was doing. He was like this guy, and I don't want to give the story. It's called The Final Summit. It's extremely powerful. It's very relatable. It's not like super spiritually-esque. It's more of like a story of this guy who's on this journey and these things happen. And it was like, it was just incredible. It's not super spiritual though. it's more of like a realistic dude having a spiritual experience, I guess, and kind of how he dealt with that. So it's a really good book for anyone who maybe just isn't quite ready for that jump into spiritual books, because those can sometimes be a lot, like The Power of Now. My mom read that and was like, bro, I don't know what to do with this. Like, I don't understand this lingo. I don't know what to do. I don't know what these words are. And for a lot of these books, man, it requires like multiple reads. Like The Power of Now, reading it for the second time now, and I'm like, whew, I'll probably read this 5 or 6 more times throughout my life, at least. But yeah, I mean, books are great. I spent a lot of time when I first started getting into spirituality. I fucking fell in love with self-help, all that stuff. And I think everyone goes to that stage where they just, they just watch every single YouTube video, watch every single video before they get to a point where they go, okay, I've taken everything from here. It's time to like apply some of this stuff to my life.
Yeah, it's an experiential thing at the end of the day, right? That's the thing.
Yeah, 100%. When you're working with these clients, have you ever gotten in over your head? Like, what happens if you say something and they're just like, dude, I can't, like, that doesn't work for me? Like, do you have like alternatives? Do you like, what do you do if you say like they had a really, really traumatizing experience, where like for me, I haven't had something that's crazy traumatic, so I wouldn't quite know how to react if someone that was a client said that to me.
I do work with clients who've been through some pretty intense trauma, and at first I was like, am I qualified to deal with this? Mm-hmm. And I spoke to my coach, and he was like, you gotta trust what they want. And I spoke to them, and I was like, look, I've just got to make really clear, I'm not trained for this. And they were like, no, I want to work with you. And these are the people that are saying that doing it is kind of helped them have more breakthroughs than in therapy. I think because fundamentally what I just do is just try and come from just a place of love and literally just be there and just let them hold the space. I really try to avoid, unless I'm very clear, unless I'm saying, try this, I will never say, this is what's going on, this is what you need to do, because I don't think anybody can do that, really. I think it's a case of helping them find what's real for them. And I always say it's not about you taking on, this isn't a coaching program where it's like, and I think there are quite a lot out there where it's like, I figured it all out, this is the way you need to do it, and it's almost like a school. No, like I see it as like, we climb down into the trenches together, we face your pain together, I help you face it and help you discover what's true for you, help you discover what you want to do. I can recommend practices and things like meditation and things that will work, but if it's not working for you, then it's not working for you. Like, I can't tell you what your reality is. You have to be true for that. So I haven't had an experience like that yet, fortunately, where I found myself over my head, or where it's sort of been a bit, a bit much. I mean, I'm trying to think whether there has been anything, but I don't think so. But I always try to be, as I say, sort of very, let them lead it. All I'm really doing is just shining a light on kind of what I'm seeing, asking a question, and then seeing what comes up. And then, whatever they tell me is their truth, we go with that, and there'll be times where I'm kind of like, I'll hear something and I'm like, oh, I think this means this. And I have to be really disciplined not to kind of just put that on them. 9 times out of 10, you keep asking the question, they come to that anyway, and it's often true. So, fortunately so far all's been well. And I'm sure there'll be a point where I'm human, right? I make mistakes all the time. Sure, there'll be a point where I mess up. And I think that was the fear. It's interesting, when I had to borrow money off my parents to pay for my coaching, to get, basically my coach helped me put together my coaching program. And that's why I'm so grateful to them, and I probably don't tell them enough. If you're watching, I love you guys. That they were very fearful of me stepping into this. And I think a lot of people are, where it's like, it's so against the norm of, you need to go and get all these degrees and get all these certifications and get all these things. And I was like, well, do you know what? I'm prepared to take the risk that I can really fuck up and maybe even make somebody worse, for the chance that I may do the opposite, and the chance that, I may help way more people than I'll hurt. I think that's needed today, to be perfectly honest. I think it needs more people, more of us. And that's really what I want to do above all else, more than the coaching. I see the coaching as one thing of what I want to do. I want to wake people up to their power, to make a difference, and to realize that all the shit going on in the world, it's our responsibility as individuals, to change it, to change ourselves, to change the world, kind of thing.
Yeah, and it requires a jump. It requires you to step out of your comfort zone, like you said. I mean, investing thousands of dollars into something that you're not even quite sure where it's going to head is dangerous, especially at our age. We don't fucking have money, you know? And so it's scary, but it makes the most sense to do it now. I mean, Gary Vee is someone I listened to for a while. I think a lot of people miss his message sometimes. They think he's all about hustle. And I'm like, no, he's about awareness and trying things and learning what makes you happy. That's what he's about. And I needed his like push to be like, yo, you're fucking 23. If every single thing goes wrong, you just go and get a job and you can make, $5,000 and you're good. Like it's not a big deal right now. You have no connections. You have no, you got to build these things. And when you're young, if you don't take these chances, you're going to be stuck 45 levels behind where you want to be because you didn't take that chance. And everyone who's someone, at least in like a career aspect, or honestly, not even career, just like in life, like they had to take a leap of faith at some point. And if you don't, like, I'm not sure how you could get to a point where your self-esteem would be that high if you never take that jump, because it's symbolic. It shows to yourself that you're like, I choose me, I have faith in myself, and that builds self-esteem, it builds self-confidence, it builds self-love, it builds momentum. And I don't know, I don't know if you can. I feel like there's a cap on how far you can go in life and how far you can achieve and grow as a person without making a symbolic jump or a gesture to yourself.
No, I agree. And I think fundamentally there's two choices we can make in life, really. We can make choices from fear or we can make choices from love. I think those are really, it's what it comes down to. Fear will always keep us in the known, always, because that's what it's there to do. Fear is there to keep us alive. The mind cannot predict, which ultimately is what fear is. It's predicting an outcome and trying to avoid the worst possible outcome to protect us. It can't predict what it doesn't know. It's got no data. That's what the mind is. It's a data bank. So if we're entering the unknown and taking a risk, it's going to come with fear. If we are always choosing to listen to that fear, we're going to stay exactly where we are. Mm-hmm. If you choose love, that's feeling with your heart. It is, trusting your heart center, which I believe is the true center of our intelligence. I really do believe this. And again, a lot of science is showing that this is the area that reads the energy. Energy is information. The stat that I'll always talk about, there's more neurons from our heart to our brain than our brain to our heart, should tell us all of that alone, right? If you choose love, it's going to take you where you really want to be, where your soul wants to be, where you want to be. 9 times out of 10, it's going to involve some fear. But since I started making heart-based decisions, my life is like flipped upside down for the better. Yes, it's taken me into some difficult, painful things, but those have all been there to serve me. They've all been happening for my highest good. So
yeah, 100%. So Easton, what I keep referring to Easton because like when I first hopped on that call, I had less than expectations for him. I thought maybe he was like a sellout guru, like just guys spewing nonsense. Just because I saw like 1 or 2 TikToks, but then I was like, you know what? He seems like a nice dude. Let me see just like what he's really about. Let me see if he's surface level, or let me see if he's got some substance. Dude, the guy's a fucking beast. I love him. He's a good, I talk to him on a daily basis now. He's a good friend now. And I didn't say, obviously, I didn't tell him this like when we were interviewing. I just want to keep my open mind. But for some reason I was like, oh, maybe this guy is like one of those gurus I see on TikTok that's full of it. And so when I started talking to him after about 10 minutes, I was like, okay, clearly this guy is just a normal dude, and I really like him, actually. And he said something about halfway through the podcast that literally, when he said it, I was like, whoa, wait, what? And he basically said, because I asked him, I was like, what do you do on the days where you don't feel like doing the things that you know you need to do? How are you supposed to do them when you don't feel like doing it? And he literally changed my life with one sentence. He goes, you have to start living a value-based life rather than a feeling-based life, in the sense that even if you don't feel like doing it, if it lines up with the values and the goals you're trying to accomplish, you do it anyway. You do it even when you're scared, even when you're anxious, even when you're tired, just do it. Because there will be days where you do feel like doing it, and you'll be very happy you did it on those days, and you'll be kicking yourself, because it's the same concept in a video game. You're playing Pokemon, and I told him this, I think it was in that podcast, but like pretend you're playing, Pokemon, whatever, Emerald, and your Pokemon in the middle of the game rolls over and says, I can't go, I'm anxious. And you're like sitting in the video game on your Game Boy, you're like, what are you talking about? No, go anyway, just go through it, like it doesn't matter. And for some reason, when it comes to us, we make all these excuses and we allow ourselves to just go by without doing it because it's no problem. Like it's really not a big deal. And like that's the thing, like if you can keep doing those things and live a value-based life, then you can kind of just trudge through, and the answer is just keep going. And dude, he changed my life in like one sentence. And ever since then, I mean, I still have days where my feelings win over and I just don't do the thing I know I should do. But changed my fucking life, dude. What was your conversation with Easton life? Like, how did that relationship even start?
Yeah, honestly, bro. So I mean, he reached out to me, and a little bit like you, I prematurely judged because all I saw was this kind of well put together picture, and it said estate agent. And then, he was just like, I'm not interested in a session. It'd be great to connect. This was quite early on in my journey, and I wasn't really aware of people networking.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, I'll definitely do that at some point. But right now I'm sort of focusing on other things. We had a call. I was just like, he was just there chilling, long hair and everything. And it was just like a very deep, profound spiritual chat. It was such an awesome conversation, pretty like very much like this, actually. It was wicked. We recorded it and actually posted a couple snippets up on TikTok. But I to be honest with you, it was a few months ago now, and I can't really remember that much of what we talked about. But it was some pretty deep stuff, and yeah, I was really impressed by the guy, I got to say, because he's he's a serial networker. He put us in touch, he put me in touch with someone else, and he's that kind of guy that will just have know so many people and bring them together. And he said that this is what he enjoys doing, is bringing people together and seeing it flourish from there. And yeah, I was very impressed with that.
Yeah, I was impressed that he literally was just, he didn't even ask to record it. He was just, I just want to talk. And I was like, why? I was like, what are you trying to get at? What are you trying to get at here? And he was just like, dude, I just want to talk to you. And I was like, okay, I've never
been approached like that before.
That's exactly what went through me. I was like, okay, right, sure.
But he's such a nice guy. He introduced me to this guy named Mark, and he's got his own podcast. Now he and I are great friends. And I was like, shit, dude, like saying yes one time to this dude just because I didn't know, and I was like, whatever, led to this like huge moment, like thing of like he introduced me to all these other people, including you, and I'm so grateful for him, dude. And I texted him the other day and told him, and I even made a TikTok about it. And God, I mean, it's crazy what can happen off one decision, like and I read this in a book, like you're one decision away from an entire roller coaster of life, And he said, I think in the book, he was like, there's no heroes, there's just heroic decisions. And I was like, bro, that is so true, bro.
Yeah, that's it. Because it's like, and I thinking back, I always had this sense of like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to be that millionaire, to be that person, to do that thing? And I had this calling in me to be someone, not to announce, that's quite egoic, but to do something with my life. But I always felt, well, that's not true. That's not me. That's not what most of us have to live, And it's like this idea that there's a divide between us and heroes. But like you say, there's not. It's just the only difference is deciding to do it, And it's so powerful.
Yeah, and the closer you get, you start to pick up momentum when you start, like you said, coming out of a place of love, coming out of a place of like your intuition and tapping into that. You start to like that self-esteem builds naturally, and you start to trust yourself. You start to like believe in yourself. You start to say, damn, I could be someone, I can. And like before I was always like, man, I wish I could, like just how you said, but I was like, it won't happen. I'm not that guy who's going to get lucky and, hit the big lottery or whatever. But now I'm like, dude, this is just me. I'm just putting myself out there. It's my authentic self. It's not like I'm going to stop next week. This is fun. I love recording podcasts. I love talking to people. I was like, there's no reason I shouldn't be able to like be everything I want to be. And it doesn't have to be coming from a place of like ego or selfishness or whatever. It just comes from a place of being authentic. And I don't know, there's something to be said. Like the reason I love this podcast is because it gives people an opportunity, because I believe everyone has a story. I don't think everyone gets heard. I feel like a lot of people don't feel heard. Maybe they haven't had a chance to talk about them ever. And it's cool to just let someone talk and, maybe vent, maybe talk about something they've learned. And there's always something that one person, anyone can teach you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that for sure. I think it's so powerful, and I think it's important, and to anyone listening, and it's something I want to do more, is just encourage people to share, to share your story. Like even if you think no one's listening, like you never know who you're impacting. And this was something I started to realize really early on. When I was sort of posting things and hardly anyone was watching them, I'd meet someone and they'd be like, dude, like what you were sharing like changed my life, or like really, really helped me, and it's not about you, but it's you do it because it feels authentic for you. but also like know that there's ripple effects for every little thing that you do, every little thing that we do. And like every single person has value, has meaning, your story has meaning, your truth has meaning. And you just never know who's going to resonate with it and need to hear it. You just really never know. So.
Yeah. And the more you do it, the more you realize how many random events can change your life. And you start taking more chances, but they're calculated. They're like calculated risks. You get better and better over time. And I think before I took my jump and went on this trip and lived in my car and traveled, I was so scared of what may happen, may not happen, that it paralyzes you into a state of just repetition, going to work, coming back, doing nothing, wishing you could do it, coming back, doing nothing. And I think what people fail to understand is once you do make that jump and once you start getting a couple experiences under your belt, it gets easy. Like when something stupid happens that 2 months ago would have crippled you, now it's like, okay, how do I solve this? How do I get past this? Instead of saying, shit, I don't know what to do. It gets easier, and that's something that I think is really hard to deliver that message to someone who hasn't jumped and taken that step yet. It requires them to take that step. And I'm curious how you get people through, especially through your business, how you get people to finally make that jump for themselves.
Often it takes enough pain to be desirous to change. I think that's why the majority of people who are awakened at the moment have been through some pain, either big trauma or small trauma that's caused a lot of pain in their life, or not all the time, but I think usually that's the case. To be honest, the jump is committing to coaching with me because it is a premium product. It is a big investment, because it needs to be, and people need to be really committed to it. And part of it is actually shifting that paradigm of completely changing the idea of kind of your value and kind of how much you can invest in yourself and things like that. So, I have conversations with people and they'll be like, I absolutely know that this is the best thing. I need to do it. I need to work with you. And they just can't take that leap. They can't justify in their mind investing that much in themselves. Sometimes they can't afford it and they don't believe that they can create it or they can find it. Being straight up, that's bullshit, because I listened to a podcast and there's this woman who was a single mother with 4 kids on 30 grand a year. She found a coach who was $150,000. I think it was $150,000. She found a way to pay that. Like if she can pay 150 grand, you can pay far less than that. But anyway, it's not really the point. I think it usually takes a big enough pain, where the pain of staying in the current reality is more than the potential pain of change, more than the potential pain of committing. And I think that's what it's got to be. And that's why we then create such big success, I think, so quickly, is because they've made that big leap and committed to themselves. They're now in this journey, and every step along the way, yes, a lot of it's going to be painful and difficult, but they've already made that leap, so they're ready to kind of keep walking, really. But you can't make anyone make that. You've just got to hold the space, help them work through it, and try and work through any abundance blocks, because when we realize that the majority of, in fact, everything about wealth, I don't know if you know about Ken Honda and his books on money. He's this Japanese writer, and Japan have more millionaires per capita than any other country in the world. He's writing these insane books about money and interviewing, basically, there's this Japanese guy who's like the Warren Buffett of Japan. He's saying what makes you rich and lastingly rich. They say that it's about money EQ, not money IQ, which is like how you feel about money, your abundance beliefs and all of these things. It's about changing those. I think that something's got to shift within them to help them do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes a lot of the time it's pain. Sometimes it is also just a belief in what they can create instead.
Yeah, I think you're 100%. You worded it really well. Like that pain has to become worse than the alternative. And that was the same for me. I got to a point where I was so miserable. I was making so much money serving. I was living at my parents' house and I was just like, dude, this sucks. I hate it. I hate this more than anything. And, over time, I finally worked myself up to get to finally leave. But it does require you getting backed into a corner and realizing that this is the worst. This is the worst. Anything is better than this. And I think that's when that big jump becomes a little bit less of a big jump. And you go, you know what? That might be worth it to just risk myself. This sucks enough, And I think that's that's pretty much the only way it gets done. You get to a point where you say, this is it. I got to make this jump. And Will Smith said it in an interview. He was like, on the other side of fear is success, something along those lines. And it's really true. Like once that jump occurs, you literally step into a different person. You become someone who has taken the jump. And that mental switch, that perspective change is like the thing. It's the cherry that will push you towards your dreams, because now you're not that person who sucked. You're not that person who couldn't achieve, couldn't do this. You're somebody else now. And, you know, I think for me, it's happened so recently that I'm so obsessed with documenting everything that's happening as it comes, because I know in 10, 20 years, I'll still be doing these kind of things. And I want people, if they start following me then, to be able to look back and say, okay, I'm at this point in Cade's journey. How the hell do I maybe get to like this point? And then they can literally look back at my archives and be, okay, this is exactly where I was at. What are some of the things he's talking about? Who are the people he's talking to? And, you know, just creating an archive. You know, you'll be in there, East will be in there, all these people will be in there who've helped me along the journey to get to me, to where I want to be, and then all the people that hopefully I help to get them where they want to be. And it's dope. Like, we're creating this conversation. Hopefully we're touching some people in ways that we probably can't even fathom. And then, you know, I'll cut them up into little TikTok clips. I'll send those to you. You'll push them out to your people. Like, it's a fun thing. And yeah, man, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Was there anything you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, there was. I just really quickly there, you touched on something that I wanted to pick up on, because I think it's really important. You mentioned when you make that change, it changes who you're no longer that person. You know, I think that's the key, is changing how you self-identify and realizing a lot of, again, what I help people with, being your own savior. It's about realizing that these beliefs, who you believe you are, is not real. It's based on your past, and your past is not your future unless you allow it to be, you know, and that's by being identified with it. But changing how you self-identify, changing who you believe that you are, is where it all comes from, you know, and that comes from taking that action. And yeah, I think that was a really powerful thing that you mentioned. The other thing I just wanted to ask was kind of what your story was in terms of, obviously I've heard a little bit, but like obviously you're traveling in your car now and just going around and you know, being free. Like, 'cause I love your Instagram feed. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's so cool.
Thank you. I was living in Charleston, South Carolina. It was really hot, humid. I didn't really like the people there. I wanted to leave, but I didn't have enough money. I wasn't sure like how to do it. I knew for sure I wanted to travel. I saw these travel vloggers and I just wanted to be that. And so I went and I finally got myself to do it. There's a whole series if people want to watch that to see kind of like my thoughts throughout it. I kind of showed all the steps leading up to me finally departing. And when I left, it just gave me this sense of like self-belief and finally going after my dreams. And I noticed it really early on that it didn't feel like I thought it would feel like. It didn't feel like I was a movie character. It didn't feel like all the glory that I was hoping. And that kind of settled in really early for me. And then it just became more of like a symbolic journey as well as a physical journey. I went literally across the entire country. I went all the way up north, went all the way like down through the middle, went back across all the way. And now I'm in Washington State on literally the other side of the country. And it was more for me to like see who I am, find out who I am. And when I first left, it was all about traveling. And I remember people telling me as I was about to leave, they're like, you're going to find yourself. And I was like, you know, I wish I could understand what that fully meant. And over time, it kind of just unraveled. It was like a slow burn until that like final like climax, which is the mountaintop moment, which is just so fucking crazy to me. Now that when I keep looking back at it, I just can't believe how epic that was. But it was such a symbolic journey for me. And it didn't start like that. It was just so amazing to do this and finally be someone that, you know, like maybe my inner child would have loved, and that's really helped me heal. And that's something that picked up halfway through. I was like, damn, I'm healing a lot of shit right now, not even intentionally, just by picking me and doing things. And it's been insane. It's been the best decision of my whole life. I remember making the video when I first quit all my jobs. I was like, this is either the worst decision of my life or the best. But either way, it's a pivotal moment, I'm pretty sure. And I'll either look back in 4 months and be so thankful, or I'll hate myself. And now it's been like 4 months and I'm like, dude, yes, yes. So, I mean, it was a symbolic thing. I wanted people to go after their dreams. It was because I couldn't get myself to do it. You know, I've watched millions of videos. And I was like, okay, well, it's not pretty, but I'm going to make it happen. I don't know what to expect here. We'll check back in a few months. And it just turned into this huge thing. Like now I'm learning this whole thing about NFTs. I found a community of people that I really like. I've sold some of my photography on NFTs, which I couldn't believe. I made a bunch of money doing that just randomly. That introduced me to some more people. And yeah, man, it's been crazy just living life. And sometimes I reflect back and it's like kind of hard to fathom just all the shit that's happened in the past 4 months. I mean, it's just such a weird reality. I mean, the thing that just happened at the beginning of the podcast, like, that's just normal now. I mean, that kind of threw me off. Not gonna lie, I was not prepared for that. And in the back of my head, I'm like worried he's gonna come back and like barge in. But dude, like, I mean, just the shit that's happened, it's been so weird. And when I describe it to other people, it sounds so bizarre. But to me, it's so just like, it's so interesting to me now because I've become someone that maybe other people look at and say, I don't know if I could ever do that. But like, that's how I looked at other people before I left. And now that I've done it, I realize I don't feel any different than before I left. Like, so, I mean, I feel different in the way that like, I believe in myself more, but I'm still me. I'm still very much me. And in some ways I've shed certain insecurities and stuff, but I'm very much still me. I still feel exactly the same. I still have really shitty days where I feel exactly how I felt at the beginning of this journey. And all I know is I've made a decision. I've pushed over that first domino and the rest are falling, and I just gotta keep going. So that's really been the everything with my
beautiful. I love it, man. I love it. Yeah, you know, my sister and her husband actually sold all their stuff and bought a van and renovated it, and they're traveling around the UK. And I just, like, I see you doing what you're doing. I see that, and I'm just like, I've got to do that at some point. You know, it's the dream. So
it's cool. Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Was there any shout outs you wanted to give before we sign off? Or
no, well, I guess I probably should slightly promote myself. If you want to give me a shout on TikTok, is probably the best place. It's just at Tobias Matthew, and Instagram's at _Tobias Matthew if you want to get in touch with me there. TikTok, I go live most mornings at 8 a.m. UK time, and other than that, you know, just go live your life. You can do it.
Hell yeah, man. I'm gonna put all your links in the descriptions of this will be on Spotify and YouTube. Hopefully this will come out next week. I have an episode coming out probably today or tomorrow. But yeah, man, guys, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. Go give Tobias a follow. Wait, by the way, are you actually 6'5"?
Yes.
Holy shit. Anyways, all right, guys. Well, peace out.